The 100-ton truck also had serious damage to the brakes. However, due to the old model of the truck, it usually needs to be imported. In order to reduce the price of old truck parts, their small workshop directly produces them. What is incredible is that they only need to. This 100-ton truck was damaged because the owner pulled a little more. Not only did the tire burst during emergency braking, but even the old brake bone was stepped on by him to create a big gap. In this case, although it was raining heavily at this time, the maintenance master was still repairing it. In order to remove the damaged brake bone, the master first needs to remove the half shaft. After loosening the middle bearing fixing nut, the brake drum has been successfully separated from the shaft tube. It only needs to remove the bolts that fix the wheel drum, and the wheel drum can be separated from the wheel net. In the small workshop on the other side, the masters are making brake drums for old trucks. After they carefully select the discarded cast iron waste, the masters will use a small cart to push it to the open space on the side, and then use a sledgehammer to hit it. These large pieces of scrap iron are broken down into small pieces. In order to strictly control the quality of castings, these iron blocks will be strictly loaded and sent to the heating furnace mouth by a small cart so that they can be heated into molten iron for subsequent gluing. This small workshop must make a sandbox for the glue column to make such a large brake drum. The masters will select a brake drum of suitable model as a mold and apply a release agent on the outside of the mold to facilitate the subsequent demolding process. Indoor workers also need to add an appropriate proportion of engine oil to improve the plasticity of the yarn. The lack of force prevents the sandbox from opening during subsequent gluing. The processed yarn can then be poured into the sandbox by the masters. During this period, they only need to use iron rods to compact the yarn. In addition, the 82-year-old jade foot is stepped on. At this time, the upper sandbox has been made. Next, the mold release agent needs to be applied to the inside of the mold. After that, the steel pipe used to shape the air holes is installed, and then the yarn is filled inside, and use the jade foot to tamp it again. The process of making the sandbox is relatively simple. After half an hour of skilled operation, the box has been basically made. At this time, only the final finishing process is needed. The brake drum is fixed with special bolts, and the demolding process is completed steadily. In order to facilitate the subsequent sand removal process, the master is using graphite to prepare the demolding agent. It is sprayed into the inside of the sandbox through a spray gun. Then, it is dried by heating to prevent the moisture inside. In this way, it can prevent water vapor from affecting the subsequent pouring process. The masters will add a counterweight on the top of the box to prevent the sandbox from cracking during the pouring process. The masters are heating these iron blocks through the waste oil furnace. The flame emitted by the burning exhaust oil in the hot furnace is like a flame. The blocks are heated very quickly. Then the masters only need to move the melted molten iron to the sandbox through the glue column tube. When gluing the column, the master will strictly observe the situation inside the sandbox. The masters responsible for the glue column can pour the molten iron into the glue column hole of the sandbox. They strictly control the flow rate of the molten iron. Gradually, one by one, the rubber pillars are glued. However, the protection of the masters is very good. There is no child wearing or taking off. In order to prevent the casting from deformation, we need to take it out of the sandbox in advance. After it cools naturally, the sand stuck inside can be cleaned up. This is the last step of sand casting, called sand dropping. The blank brake bone, the masters also need to use the lathe for detailed processing. During the processing, in this process, the master first gradually cuts the outer side to a suitable size. After completing this step, the inner part of the brake bone can be processed. Because the inner part is in contact with the brake pad, it is not only necessary to cut it flat, but also to control the size. During processing, the skilled master strictly observes the cutting conditions and carefully adjusts the amount of force. The inner part has been cut very quickly. The contact surface of the net is cut flat. After the inner side is cut, it is only necessary to cut the outer side of the brake drum. The master adjusts the concentricity through skilled operation to prevent the cutting process from affecting the processing accuracy. The drum surface was cut very quickly after being carefully cut with a flat grinder. The inside was then carefully chamfered and the uneven side was smoothed with an angle grinder. The brake drum was finished. Then, it was only necessary to use a drill press to drill a hole in the head. They had a special mold for positioning. The process progressed very quickly. After that, it was only necessary to spray anti-aging paint on the outside to prevent subsequent rust. When installing the brake drum, the master only needed to use bolts to fasten the brake drum to the wheel net. The original simple installation process was completed in accordance with the fact that they did not have a high-end air cannon. The master spent more than 20 minutes to finally install it. After that, the brake drum could be installed on the truck. The installation process was very simple. It was necessary to install the first one to be removed and the last one to be removed. However, their equipment was limited and the installation process was time-consuming. Under normal circumstances, the master repaired the car from day to evening in the heavy rain. The owner could continue to haul goods. The master, who had worked hard all day, could finally get off work. How do you feel about the production and maintenance of the masters? If you give it out of 10, how many points would you give?